Football Podcast. Practice number 4 in the books just minutes ago out at the Methodist Training Center across the street from NRG Stadium. The Houston Texans getting after it on a Monday here, and with an expected padded practice tomorrow. Today, just in jerseys and helmets. Once again, great to be with you. I'm Sean Pendergast, one half of Payne and Pendergast on Sports Radio 610. You can catch us every morning, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m. During the first 2 weeks of training camp, 6 to 8 a.m. as we give up those last 2 hours of the show from 8 to 10 to Texans Radio. So for the next week and change, Seth and I will be on 6 to 8 a.m. But throughout most of the year, it is 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. You can get it on the Odyssey app. You can get it wherever, you stream YouTube, stream Twitch. We've got a channel on there where you can see it as well. A lot of ways to consume not only our show, but all the shows on the station. If you're listening to this podcast, you are probably a Houston Texans fan. And we, of course, are the flagship of the Houston Texans, and we will have you covered not just all training camp long, but all season long with game coverage on game day and coverage throughout the week. So appreciate you tuning into this podcast. If you're just finding us, give us a quick click on the subscribe button, and you'll get the podcast. Each and every episode that drops, you'll get it right away to wherever you listen to your podcast. Important for training camp because, as you know, my promise to you, the listener, has been that I plan to do a post-practice report, 15, 20 minutes, very consumable, following each practice here in Houston. There are 3 practices the Texans are going to conduct outside of Houston. I'm not sure how many of you are fully aware of that, but the Hall of Fame game is next week up in Ohio. They're going to stay up there for the induction of Andre Johnson, and then they're going to stay up there and practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that following week in Ohio because their next game is in Pittsburgh. Their next preseason game is in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. So rather than travel all the way back, bring everybody back to Houston, practice in the heat down here, and get on a plane and go up there on Thursday for a game on Friday, the Texans are wisely opting to just stay up in that part of the country, practice in what I would assume are cooler temperatures, although my wife and I were up in the mountain range area of the country, the Dakotas and Wyoming and Denver. It was hotter up there than it's been here in Houston the last week. So who the hell knows, man? Mother Nature is on crack this year, I think. So, but I don't want to piss her off. So no more hurricanes, please. I didn't mean that, Mother Nature. You're just acting a little funny right now. It's like you're in a relationship and it's a little shaky right now. I don't know, Mother Nature, if Father Time is cheating on her right now. I have no idea. But anyways, the weather's been weird. So practice number 4 for the Houston Texans. Let's get into that. And I would say the theme of today's practice out there at the Methodist Training Center was defense. Defense won the day for the Houston Texans. And look, I will quote a wise sage that once coached the Texans for a single season 3 years ago by the name of David Culley, who said, hey, in training camp, it doesn't matter who's making the play because it's a Texan making the play. So from that standpoint, it was cool to see the defense doing what they're doing. The defense has been solid throughout camp, but although I think C.J. Stroud has largely looked very crisp and very CJ-like throughout most of the camp. That's to be expected. He's one of the best quarterbacks in football. Davis Mills has been having a pretty decent camp as well. Those are the 2 main ones that we've been seeing. We've been getting a little smatterings of Tim Boyle and smatterings of Case Keenum. But Davis and CJ have been getting about equal reps. CJ with the 1s, obviously, Davis with the 2s. But today was the first day that I think the defense clearly won the day. You know, if this were a boxing match, the defense, their card would be 10-9, 10-9, 10-8 with a bunch of wins throughout the day. CJ Stroud at times I thought looked visibly frustrated, which I think is great to see that aligns with the competitive gene that defines CJ Stroud, but he was definitely frustrated. The offense was just out of sync. You know, even the plays, it's hard to tell on the running plays what's going well and what's going poorly. There are things you can glean from the running plays for sure, but the pass plays are the ones that really kind of show what the rhythm is looking like and how dialed in guys are. Nico Collins had a bad drop on a fade route that CJ threw to him that was on the money, and Nico just dropped it. Defensive ends and defensive tackles throughout the day were just eating constantly. You know, Will Anderson continues to do a number of times on rookie Blake Fisher. Blake Fisher gets his wins too, I think largely from what the expectations are. Fisher's getting great experience right now. I said that on the previous episode of the podcast. Fisher is getting great experience right now, but it is at the expense of looking overwhelmed at times with Will Anderson. Danielle Hunter had more than his fair share of wins against Titus Howard today. The interior of the defensive line, Mario Edwards, number 97. If you guys are going to be watching the Hall of Fame game, or you're going to be coming out to the games at NRG Stadium, or if you're coming out to the practices starting tomorrow, keep an eye on number 97 on defense, Mario Edwards. He's been making a lot of plays. Tim Settle, 98, made some plays today as well. So the defensive line, which we know DeMeco Ryan says that's the catalyst for the whole defense, is everything in this defense is built around winning up front, the defensive line. And from that standpoint, I think it was good news. Unfortunately, everything in this offense is predicated on good offensive line play, and we're not seeing a ton of that. At least not today. We didn't, So I think that's the big theme for today. And I'll get into some of the individual plays when I get to the bottom bullet point right here, practice notes. I'll talk about some of the individual plays, but know that this team defensively looked really good today. And I think that's what the hope is that, hey, maybe this defense is a little better than we're giving them credit for heading into the season. No Joe Mixon at practice today. I think that's worth noting. DeMeco Ryans kind of shrugged it off when he was asked about it by DJ Bieneme of ESPN after practice today. DeMeco said Joe's going to be fine. So no disclosure. Clearly something is up physically with Joe Mixon if he missed Saturday and he missed Monday. I will say this is not me reporting anything. Joe Mixon met with the media on Friday. When he was waiting his turn to meet with the media, he was sitting on his helmet, kind of off to the side, talking to people who looked like family members of his. At the end of practice, they let all the family members kind of come down onto the field and chit-chat with the players. Joe was talking to somebody, but while he was doing that, he was sitting on his helmet, and he was fairly intensely rubbing his left leg. I have no idea if that's tied to why he was out. I'm only noting something that I saw with my own eyes. So hopefully it's not a quad injury or something like that. But Joe Mixon missing 2 days in a row is worth noting. We should note as well the Texans signed Cam Akers, former 1,000-yard rusher for the Rams, who is now coming back from his second Achilles injury, suffered an Achilles tear in the preseason in 2021, made it back in time for the Super Bowl that year, and then suffered a torn Achilles on his other leg again as a member of the Minnesota Vikings this past season. So now coming back again. So I don't know how much to expect from Cam Akers. I don't know if signing Cam Akers is any sort of tell as to what the Joe Mixon situation is, or if this is just another camp body that they're bringing in for competition at a position where they may feel like it needs competition. I do think it's interesting to note that Cam Akers gets brought in on essentially day 2 of a hiatus from Joe Mixon. That makes me feel a little bit nervous, but we'll see. DeMeco Ryans doesn't seem to think that the Mixon thing is any big deal. So that's my big theme for today is defense wins the day today. Pads tomorrow, so we'll get a better idea. Again, no tackling in training camp, no going to the ground in training camp, but tackling it will mean more physicality along the offensive and defensive line. We should get a much better feel for exactly what Kenyon Green is at this point, what Juice Scruggs is like at center at this point. Anything having to do with contact, we should get a better feel for starting tomorrow with pads. Speaking of Kenyon Green, I think the other thing to note as I'm looking around practice, I'm going to call them the comeback kids, because I think there are several guys on this team that I don't know that DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio are counting on either regaining the form they've had or attaining the potential that they see in them as players. I don't know exactly what the Texans are counting on from these guys, but there are 4 of them from the class of 2022, from that draft class, the Derek Stingley draft class. Stingley's not one of them. Stingley looks amazing in camp this year. But there's 4 guys from that draft class that have either been drafted based on their potential and or flashed potential, some in big doses like Dameon Pierce. But I think it's appropriate here maybe to give a report on those guys. So I'll call them the comeback kids because, again, I don't know how much the Texans are counting on them. But if they get 2, 3, all 4 of these guys to either gain or regain the form that they were drafted for, then the Texans are going to be in very, very good shape this year. Kenyon Green, Jalen Petrie, John Mechie III, and Dameon Pierce. And I would say that all 4 of those guys have been green arrow up during this training camp. Kenyon Green, it goes back to minicamp and OTAs where he first showed up and we got our first look at him. New jersey number, but more importantly, new body. Kenyon Green looks like a completely different human being than the one that took the field in 2022 and 2023. We'll learn more tomorrow about Kenyon Green when they put the pads on, but so far so good in terms of how he's moving, how he looks, and it's worth noting he's been running with what looks like the first string offensive line throughout the entirety of camp. He's been with the number one. So if there's a competition at left guard, it's something that's getting hashed out in the film room because throughout these first 4 practices, he's been running with the ones. That's a very, very good sign. Jalen Petrie, voted a captain last year in his second year by his teammates, coming off a rookie year where he put up some numbers, picked off some balls, made a lot of tackles, but also missed a lot of tackles. Jalen Petrie would be the first to tell you that he had a lot to improve upon going into year 2. It seemed like he regressed in year 2, whether it was being in a new system or being asked to do different things that maybe weren't his strength. For whatever reason, it didn't click for Jalen Petrie. I will tell you, the Texans seem to be using him more during training camp in a fashion that he was used at Baylor, around the line of scrimmage, in a nickel cornerback spot, slot corner, using him quite a bit there that he might be more comfortable doing. And as a result, they've been using Eric Murray and Jimmy Ward as the 2 safeties. Kalen Bullock's been getting in there a little bit as well. Kalen Bullock had another near pick today. He should have had a pick 6 today, Kalen Bullock. So they've been, maybe because they feel like they've got a little depth at safety, they've been moving Petrie around a little bit more. Again, he's looked good. He got accolades from Matt Burke on Saturday after practice. Green arrow up for Jalen Petrie. Third comeback kid, John Mechie III, was able to get on the field last year, but wasn't able to do much. Guy's coming off cancer treatments and an ACL before that. Mechie's been a story throughout the offseason this year. CJ Stroud initially talking about him looking amazing in workouts. Then through minicamp and OTAs, he did look more explosive. He's looked like an NFL wide receiver in this training camp so far, highlighted by the deep ball he caught from Davis Mills on Saturday. But John Mechie III, definitely green arrow up. I don't know if it means more for him this season statistically. He only had about 15 to 20 catches last year, and there's so many mouths to feed. But I think the thing about Mechie is that if it is a one-year thing with Stephon Diggs, then at least you've got Mechie waiting in the wings to take over as that third receiver with Nico Collins and Tank Dell, who we know are both going to be here for several more years. So Mechie, green arrow up, baby. This is where I wish I could learn. I got to learn some things on StreamYard so I can go ping and put a green arrow next to my hand. That would look pretty sizzly. So the last one, Dameon Pierce, and you guys know we've been reporting on Dameon throughout camp. He's been getting, obviously, and maybe unfortunately, the last couple practices, reps with the ones because Mixon has been out. But Pierce looks largely like a more decisive runner. Looks like he spent some time in the playbook the offseason and kind of watching film and trying to become a productive player. This, I will tell you, the team has great trust in Dameon Pierce right now because there is no fallback plan if something happens to if Dameon Pierce gets hurt, you're into Dare Ogunbowale as your starting tailback if Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce are both out. So they are putting incredible trust in the hands and legs and feet of Dameon Pierce. That said, Dameon Pierce has looked like he's embracing that. He's looked good throughout camp. Again, green arrow up for him. I give green arrow up to all these guys, knowing that it's really hard to look awful at this stage of training camp, but they've all shown enough for me to be optimistic about their role on the team. So I think that's a really positive development from camp. That was half of that draft class almost. And if you recall, man, this time last year, really into the halfway point of last season, we were feeling the same way about Stingley as we were about some of the guys I just named. Thank God Stingley came back and put up the end of season that he did. So comeback kids, all looking good. So final practice notes. We mentioned the Cam Akers pickup. He was out there today working out and doing things. I don't know that I saw him doing much, if anything, in team parts, the 11-on-11, but he was suited up. He was doing some drills. He was in a helmet. He's wearing number 22. If you're at practice tomorrow, he didn't have a name on the back of his jersey yet, but he was wearing jersey number 22. So I'm interested if that's my biggest thing. Does the Cam Akers acquisition have anything to do with Joe Mixon being out right now? Like long-term. I don't think D'Amico Ryans would lie to us about injuries. He doesn't seem concerned about it, about the Mixon injury, but we'll wait and see. No Christian Harris again. Again, that's another absence that has been kind of dismissed by the team as nothing major. Again, one more day out with Christian Harris. With each day that he's out, I do get concerned about it. No Laramie Tunsil, not super concerned about that. Again, he was working out on the side field. He looks to be in great shape. They just got him on a schedule. So that's kind of the attendance. I guess the other ones not practicing that are worth noting would be Dalton Schultz was not practicing today. I don't know if there was an update on why Schultz didn't practice or if it was a vet's day off. But it meant a lot of action for Tegan Catoriano and Cade Stover, who look to be kind of neck and neck right now on the roster, and Brevin Jordan getting some run with the ones as well. Tight end's a really interesting position because if Catoriano is healthy, he's shown some things in the past where he may be a good fit in this system. Brevin Jordan did some good things last year. Cade Stover's not going anywhere. They drafted him in the 4th round, and they love him. So tight end, when you throw Dalton Schultz in there too, becomes really interesting because this is as much depth, it feels like, as they've had at that position in a while. So there you go. As far as plays, they continued to work on kickoff return quite a bit in camp today. And again, they're preparing in kickoff coverage and kickoff return like there's no expectation for what a normal kickoff is going to look like in this new world. They were running some plays with multiple pitches and end arounds and things like that looked really cool. There was one in particular that Xavier Hutchinson wound up starting on one side of the field and coming around to the other and took almost like an option pitch. They've clearly been scheming things up. I think they've just been going and getting like 2 cases of beer and just figuring out what the hell. Fuck it, man. Let's just put this triple option up thing here and see how that goes. I don't think that's how that conversation went because nobody on the staff sounds like that until they bring in Jim Bob Cooter for some reason, and then they'll have somebody that sounds like that. But I'll say all that to say they are clearly working on some things and may have some fun stuff dialed up in the Hall of Fame game. Let's just put it that way. So ton of kickoff return work. As far as individual plays, interception from Jeff Okudah on a deep route. That was pretty cool to see. Okudah is a guy who started to get into the groove here and get his name in that mix. Lassiter is still running with the ones at cornerback right now. And he had a play, probably the most noteworthy play Lassiter had today was a play that he was running stride for stride with Stephon Diggs on a deep route and kind of shoved him, gave him sort of a 2-handed shove in the chest. They were kind of running chest to chest along the sideline. I thought it was good to see Lassiter running step for step with Diggs. I thought the contact was more incidental or kind of ticky-tack. The referee that was out there, and they have referees out there for 11-on-11, didn't throw a flag. But all my colleagues there, Clint Stoerner and Cody Stutes, and I think Landry Locker, they all thought it was a PI. So the hell do I know? Maybe I'm one of those refs who just lets it go. But Kamari Lassiter, I'm on your side on this one, okay? I like that you were step for step with Diggs. A near pick 6, should have been pick 6 for Kalen Bullock off of Davis Mills. The INT, I think, to Okudah was a Mills pass. So there is that. The repeated plundering of the offensive line today was both exciting to see from a defensive perspective and concerning to see from an offensive perspective. But there was not much to write home about offensively. There was one particular play, I guess the best play they had that I saw offensively was I think it was the 3rd string offense. Xavier Hutchinson on a nice crosser took it to the house, like crossing route, and just caught him in stride. I don't even know if it was Boyle or Keenum that threw it to him, but it was one of those things like, all right, when your best play is a crosser from your 8th wide receiver, that's a defensive day for you. So that's what kind of day it was out at NRG Stadium today. Hey, a quick reminder, mailbag tomorrow, HOU mailbag at gmail.com tomorrow. So send in your emails. I've got some good ones already, but if you have any more, you want to send them in. It may reach a point where maybe I'm doing a couple mailbags a week during training camp if I feel like I'm getting enough good emails to justify it. Really, I only need about 7 or 8 good emails to make a mailbag episode. So I've got one loaded already, but if you want to send more in, it's training camp. So the questions are going to evergreen just fine. So keep sending them in, keep them coming. Love the feedback. A reminder too, to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. That's the big thing. Tell a friend, share it. If I tweet it, share it. I love when you do that. So we want to get this thing going. We want to build a nice community as we head towards the season. Should be a whole lot of fun. So for my producer, Anthony Irwin, who gets these episodes, been working overtime, getting all these training camp reports out to you. Big thanks to Anthony for that. Thank you all for listening. I'll be back tomorrow. 2 episodes tomorrow. Mailbag tomorrow, practice report tomorrow. It's jumping over at NRG Stadium. And we got pads going on tomorrow, I do believe. So be ready for that. Appreciate all of you listening. Until tomorrow, have a great day, everybody. Go Texans.